What's up there, Workforce? Chris here with Work to Game, and Bryan put out a long video this morning going over the 4.55 patch notes, so if you want that, go see those, and also talking a little bit about the new prohibited change, and I just wanted to weigh in and kind of pick up where the conversation went off, because you guys have been saying a lot of interesting things, and I just wanted to kind of focus in on this one thing. So first, let me just sum it up, but if you want it in much greater detail, go check out Bryan's video from earlier today. Now, they are changing the account policy. You're going to hear my dog kind of whining. We've been playing, and he's just, I don't know. He's being a puppy. He just wants non-stop attention. So, reasons for the changes. Basically, they have seen changes in the community, and they have decided that it is better to intervene than worry about waiting for communication to solve it. In the past, they have waited for you to report something or try to solve it yourself, and even when you do report it, they have oftentimes said things are annoying but not crossing the line, so it's not necessarily worthwhile to a ban. Now, this is something that they said a change like this would be difficult to reverse, so they know that once they go down this road, there is no going back, and they need to, but they've decided they want to protect this community. And my first response is, you guys always know that I'm against censorship. I'm all for kind of free speech. Anytime it comes up in any post we make, I worry about if you ban the people who, yes, I agree, they're being ridiculous, then do you ban the people who are being a little less ridiculous, less ridiculous, less ridiculous? Next thing you know, you're banning people who I don't really think did anything wrong. So where does the line stop? So I just get nervous with the slippery slope, but this is the direction they've decided to go. Now, the prohibited behaviors are going to be harassment. So this is things talking about somebody's gender, their religion, obscene, indecent expression. So I'm wondering if this is going to get into kind of the ERP and stuff and how public they're looking. Are they searching for it? So if people are doing this in their houses, is that a problem? Or is it just a problem if you're doing it in chat somewhere like Eureka? Stalking, disclosing personal information. So across the board, most of this makes sense to me. The definition of what obscene and indecent is, inflicting emotional distress, a lot of it has to do with, like, if we're standing in the house and Bryan like pokes me a bunch of times and then says some joke about, you know, some glamour I'm trying on as I like pull one of the pieces on and off, like, does that make that bannable? Nuisance behavior, and so this is anything that hurts or obstructs gameplay but is not classified as harassment. So this includes things like offensive, so threatening people, using bad language, belittling people, excessive criticism, negative ridicule. I really start to worry where the line is. If on one hand, I don't think that yelling at somebody and telling them they're bad at this game makes them better. On the other hand, not being allowed to criticize them kind of just protects somebody who maybe isn't doing good at this game, and that's going to lead into another problem further down. Lack of consideration. And then as we move down, obstruction of play. So this is anything like you're starting to spam the chat log, you're starting to get in the way of them playing, you're intentionally leaving, you're triggering vote abandons every time just to harass people, just to troll. But by whose definition? To me, the guy that doesn't want to keep clicking no, I don't want to vote abandon, it feels like harassment. To him, it may feel like, guys, I just want to be out of here without a penalty. And then the GM gets to come in and decide one of us is right. MPK means the act of sending a monster towards somebody to knock them out. This is something, so as you start to get into this and like healers kind of pulling somebody into something and it's funny, if it's done among friends and it's not reported, is it a problem? Like, I get why it's a problem if it's done to strangers, but like if Jelly does it to me and we laugh about it and then she doesn't do it again, like, I don't see the problem with that. If we're all just laughing and having a good time. Fraud is an obviously bannable one. I think this was probably already bannable in the terms of service. So this is, you know, trading things, loot fraud, betting fraud. This one's interesting because they didn't ban betting as long as it's in-game items for in-game events and you're doing it without fraud. So if you want to bet on whether or not the next map sends you to level 5 in Nazmir or whatever, then as long as you pay out what you said you would, we're all good here. If you want to bet that you could win the next Chocobo race to increase the odds, to increase the stakes, you know, we can go at it, and then whichever one of us beats the other one wins. Impersonation means impersonating or fraudulently claiming to be other persons. That's an easy one, especially if you're trying to impersonate being a GM or something. That's always bannable in games. Disrupt game balance. This is one that I really honed in on when I was watching Bryan's video. Prohibits the use of third-party programs or tools. That's vague. But then they this includes things that make absentee play, so auto fishing, auto crafting, something like that goes in and basically emulates playstyle. Not a macro, not something like that, but was literally doing the clicking for you. That I can see how that's fraudulent, but disrupts game balance. Does that include damage meters? Does that include anything like that? So because this is creating, distributing, using, or promoting utilities that interact with the game. That is an incredibly vague thing to say might have ban level stuff behind it. Exploiting bugs and glitches, automating game processes, those are obviously bannable in every MMO. Makes sense. Great. So the GM may speak to players to investigate and confirm absentee play. Okay. I worry a little bit about Ryan's letting his daughter fish for him or something, but she probably won't look like a bot because maybe she's not literally operating at perfect efficiency. But botting behavior is something to be concerned about. I just worry about does this close the door on modding? We talk about modding a lot, and one of the reasons they've been against modding is you can't mod cross-platform equally, especially because PS4 has pretty much closed that door. I know, Chuck. He's very loud. I don't know if he's coming through on the mic. So we're working on it. So the real money transfers is another bannable thing that's always been bannable. It actually is one of the only things that forever you've been able to right click and just report somebody for it. I wish there were other things you could right click for, because there are people that are sometimes being ridiculous and blacklisting isn't quite enough. And I would like to actively share, hey, they're being really ridiculous. Account sharing or loaning. I assume that this is for the purpose of malicious intent or to shortcut something. So I assume this is for the purpose of paying somebody to power level or taking advantage of some loophole by, transferring money. Like if I have access to this shared account, I can transfer money across myself, or I don't know. I assume that it's fine if I'm just going out of town and I need Bryan to log in and check my retainers. But I think what they're really trying to do is close that, hey, if I then report my account as stolen, they don't want it. We didn't encourage whatever behavior led to this. So if Bryan then runs off and takes all my money, they're like, well, you shouldn't have done it in the first place. So I assume this one, it would make sense to me that this is in, but not enforced. It's just there to protect them. And then manipulating a feature so that it does not function as intended. Exploits have always been something that we agree are bannable, and I assume that the blue mage leveling and stuff, personal gain and things like that are this is just putting the nail in that and saying, we don't really like that people exploit our game. It's called an exploit. Anytime you're describing a methodology, okay, so what you have to do is before the server realizes whatever you're about to say is an exploit, and then ignoring the game master's instructions, obviously. So that's everything that's bannable in a nutshell. Bryan goes line by line, explains these a little bit more, and basically there are different types of penalties, cautions, warnings, temporary account penalties, and it can even mean that if you have multiple accounts and stuff, that it can affect, whether or not that affects all of them. And so this is all in here. I'll put the links in below. Bryan goes a lot more in detail. I just wanted to talk a little bit about what does this mean in the context of you guys' comments, because you guys asked a lot of really good ones. So we'll kind of start at the top and we'll just pick a few, see if I can find the ones that I knew were interesting. So, this comes just after many players migrated to WoW. Coincidence? Players have been migrating from WoW to 14 for a very long time and back. They go back and forth. It's a similar set of bones with a different execution, and so if one game is starting to not satisfy you, you should try the other game before just giving up on the genre. So is it a coincidence? There's some magic wave of them coming and breaking all the rules? No, I don't think it has anything to do with that. Now there are more and more new players bringing, changing the culture of the game. I do think it has something to do with that, but it doesn't matter where they're coming from specifically. Basically, they went super soft and they're going to be snowflakes and all that, and they're criticizing troll players. No, I think that they are known for having an incredibly friendly and accepting community. And so saying that they want to protect that makes them SJWs? No, I don't think that that's the case. So I think that, that's not the intention here, is that they're wanting to just curate to this perfect thing. I just think that they have something they want to protect, and they're just doing their best. Do I agree with their methods? No. I think censorship is a bad road to go down. It puts a lot of, first of all, it puts a lot of responsibility on them, because now if they have a bad experience, you can say, well, you should have caught this. You put all these things in place, and I was affected. And so it's no longer, you were off camping in the woods and an animal attacked you. That's not on us. It's no, these are protected woods. You're safe here. So now you're expanding the scope of the game. So without increasing the amount of money that I pay you every month, you're taking on an additional burden that now you're responsible for. So I think that that's a problem. And then I think on top of that, now because you have that responsibility, you have to define everything clearly, concisely, and consistently. You can't ban something in one case and not in another case. And so now you have to have this perfect understanding, which means that you're going to use your perfect understanding. And there are things that I feel, oh, that was a funny joke. No, that's bannable. And so it leads me to have more questions, like how are they coming in and detecting these things if they're starting to take a more active role and they're not waiting for somebody to report it? Or is this just saying there have been times people reported it and we've decided not to act because it was on the line, and now we're still going to only be getting things based on people reporting, but then you'll know this is how we found you. And if you're being investigated or whatever, if they go scroll through chat logs and they say, hey, what they reported you for isn't an issue, but I see this other thing you're doing, and that gives them that ability to kind of expand their investigative capabilities without making you feel like you were targeted. So scrolling down a little more, you guys it's a great conversation. I appreciate the vast majority of you being respectful here. So that's definitely something. So I know that there's already communities that know that they've been breaking these rules. So people are like, well, how would I know? And then they see it and they're like, oh yeah, that's us. So you're going to punish wrong thinking or a person's playstyle. So when a healer stops healing and you ask why, they can be punished for it. That's my fear. Dark Shadow Saber, that is 100% my fear, that now bad play could be seen as harassment, and critiquing bad play could be seen as harassment, and it becomes just a arms race of who reports who first, or who GW thinks, or who the GM thinks is in the wrong first or most, and do both have to be punished. So I assume, like this up here says, I highly doubt they're going to enforce it harder. They just gave GMs the ability, but if they don't, this is going to be a huge problem. I don't think this is going to magically fix gil selling. Anywhere there is to make real money, people will do it. I think that the big thing here is that it's something to be aware of that they're starting to do. So if you're making jokes, if you're in a party with people and you're making jokes and there's a random in that party, be a little more aware of that. If you're running as a group of 3 and you picked up a rando, and especially if you're like harassing each other and it's like we're in voice chat but you're harassing me in game, like, way to go, bad healer, you let me die. And it's like, I know that I overpulled and I'm in chat and I'm like, that's so funny, I way overpulled. Like, technically that person could report that and then I would be in the wrong. So, and one of the big things they said here is, if we jump back, service accounts that have been terminated will not be reinstated under any circumstances. So if you build up enough of these little things to turn it into a termination, that's forever. So it's just something to be a little more aware of. If you're going to be on the line, if you're going to use foul language, if you're going to make inappropriate jokes, if you're going to jest at each other for being bad at the game, if you're going to do any of these things, then what I would say is absolutely try to take that to somewhere like voice chat, somewhere that is private, or don't do it. I was raised, one of the rules in my household growing up is my mom would always say, if I walked in at any time and the behavior you were doing, you felt you had to explain, you probably shouldn't be doing it. So if I said the punchline to a joke and my mom walked in and it was so appalling that I immediately felt that I needed her attention to explain the joke and I couldn't just leave it at, she could tell I was joking, then I shouldn't have told the joke. And it's yes, it makes life a little more restrictive if you want to live hardcore by that, but it is a good rule on, how to conduct yourself in a public setting always. So anytime you're at somebody's house you don't know, anytime you're at work, anytime you're at school, anytime you're in public, in the mall, or now these days in a game or on social media, just be aware that you have a lot more eyeballs than the ones that you may have put the material out there for. And this game in particular is going to start reaching out and saying, hey, we're going to start doing something about this if you're crossing the line. So my links will be down below. I just wanted to kind of pick up as a semi-community feedback, really informal, because it hasn't been 24 hours, so we don't have like full conversations totally resolved here yet. I see like 13, replies to some of these, 6 replies. So I see you guys starting to have these conversations. I encourage you to go in here and have this discussion and kind of get a feel for what does this mean for the community? Because ultimately, just like we can't let the meta define us, we define the meta. The community, yes, they set out the rules, but we decide how to operate in those. And so it's important that we're all on the same page with why this might have gone out, because this didn't come out of nowhere. They didn't just say, hey, I want our GM stuff to enforce way more stuff, way more often. I want to be paid the same amount of money to take on all the additional responsibility. They did it because they felt that it had to protect something. So just be aware that this comes from players who don't like being told they're bad at the game without, when a new Alliance raid comes out and people just say get good or don't stand in bad, and that's it. And that's not actionable advice. So just be sure, hey, I noticed you got clipped by something. Not sure if you knew this, but like that does enough damage that as a caster it can one-shot you, or it can two-shot you, or hey, I didn't have a heal on that last one. Did you have one just not go off, or am I standing too far, and things like that. So that's really it. My name's Chris with Work to Game. I hope you guys have a fantastic day. Let's continue this conversation in the comments on Bryan's video, and on this one, thank you so much, and I'll talk to you later.
Do you guys remember Clyde the couch bear from the early videos when I was shooting in my living room and the couch was right behind me? Just wanted to do a quick update on his life. He has been way promoted. He's now guest bedroom bear. Doesn't flow as well, but definitely feels like he's got his own sweet gigs now that we have 2 beds in our house.